Hey, I'm John Taylor. Welcome back. And today it's pizza, but it's not pan pizza. It's going to be pizza like you've seen made everywhere, as far as on a pan that goes into the oven, and it's really flat, real thin, really crispy, really good, because it's going to have whole wheat sourdough crust on it. And what I'm going to do is pour some freshly ground flour in. If I was eyeing it, I would probably say it's about 2 cups. You can measure it if you want. I don't need to when I'm just going to add water. And what I'm going to do is, after I get some reverse osmosis water, you always want to use purified water, not chlorine water. I'm going to put a little bit in there, just a little. You can always add more. Underwater it. Put 3 tablespoons or so of starter, and I've got starter I added to it this morning, so it's perfect. I'm going to get my spoon out of there, and then I'm going to start stirring that flour. Now, compared to bread, which I want to rise, I'm going to make this drier. And then much drier than bread, because I don't care if it rises that much. And what happens is, when it's a little drier, the consistency of the flour is so strong that even the air it pushes against it doesn't really rise it that much. So as you're doing it, just add little bit by little bit, but you want a pretty, compared to bread, you want a really firm ball. Now, pasta is typically made with, sourdough pasta is typically made with egg in it also, and you can make your pizza dough like that. But for this one, I'm just going to use flour, water, and starter. And again, every time you put water, don't put too much. You're going to end up having to add a lot of dough back to, a lot of flour back to it, because for this one, you want it drier. The reason why, because we're going to make frisbees out of it and throw it. No, that's not. All right. Little joke. What we're going to do is we're going to roll it out with the rolling pin, and we want it to roll. But that will be tomorrow. It's still a little dry. Just know, I've had friends I've helped this with, and the first thing they do is they throw too much water in, and next thing you know, they got a sloppy mess. It's sticking to their hands. You can see it's not sticking to my hands whatsoever. So I've only put enough water in. You got to give it a cup, 30 seconds, 20 seconds to absorb the water. I'm probably going slower than I need to, but you can see now that that's a good ball, and the consistency, when I go like that, it kind of breaks up, so it's not quite enough water. But now we're down to like 2 tablespoons at most, probably, to put in there and get the rest of the moisture we want. So the fermenting is going to allow the nutrients to be assimilable, break down the gluten, but as far as causing air to make it rise up, it doesn't matter. And so it can, typically what happens with people who make their dough ball too dry with bread is they won't get the bread to rise very much. But it's not going to make any difference with this, because we're having pizza. Now, of course, you can make pizza traditionally like this is going to be, where you roll it out, or you can put in a pan. I'm making this drier so we can, that's about it. Now, I took probably a little longer, because I want to show you that I always add the water slow. And you can still see it's not sticking to my hands and being really sloppy. But we're going to have a dough ball that when we get to it tomorrow, after it's fermented, we're going to put it down on top of here and roll it out. And that's going to make it ultra thin and crispy, just like you get at the pizza places you shouldn't be eating at. But this is actually nutritious pizza. This is going to be sourdough, completely reduced gluten, nutrients assimilable, whole wheat, and then whatever we put on top of it. So I'm putting that in there, just let it ferment. And I'm going to keep the little amount of moisture I got in there. I put a flour, it's called a flour sack towel. All the items that I use, I put in a link down below the description. You can see all of them. It's just what I use. A lot of things will work. Once I find something that works for me, I'm good. So these are great because they're smooth and the dough doesn't stick to them like a towel would, where they have the little pieces of towel coming up all over the place. So that's sealed now, and I'm going to let that sit and ferment overnight, and then we'll be back and make pizza. And it's going to be quicker than you think because editing. See you in a bit. Okay, we're back, and now we're going to finish making pizza. We've had the dough fermenting overnight, and so now we have a small ball of dough. And you remember that we didn't put too much water or moisture in it because I didn't really care about how much it raised, because now I've got flour spread out on my board. I'm going to use plenty of flour because we don't want it to stick. But what we want to do is make it flat like a pizza crust, a nice crisp pizza crust. The key to this is really just not using too much moisture in it so that we can roll it out, because whatever we roll it to be right now, that's going to be your pizza crust. And we don't want the rolling pin to stick to it. It's a little different than bread. And we don't have egg in this like you would make pasta, but you can. Italian pizza makers will use egg in the dough. The best thing to do is just try different things. Try it and see what you like. Because what the main thing is that we're using wholesome, good food that's good for you. 100% whole wheat, the grain from the sun, which is a staple of life for all time. And many people say, well, it's not good for you. Well, maybe not in the present form, what it's become, because they degrade it. They take the nutrients out of it so much so that they're required to enrich it or put so-called nutrients back into it to be able to legally sell it as food. I mean, that's pretty bad. You degrade something to the level that you can't even call it food anymore, and it was originally wheat, and so you have to enrich it. Well, this is not going to need any enriching. Now, just to be clear, where you can go wrong with this, and let's see if I did, is not having enough flour on your surface. You don't want it to stick when you're rolling it out, because I'm doing it on purpose to get, see right there, it's stuck to my finger. It's just a little bit too much moisture there. So you want to make sure and use plenty of flour. But once we get that right, we're going to spread that baby out on the pizza pan. And the pizza pan that I have is a little bit large, so it might be a little bigger than the pizza pan, but no big deal. That's spread out dough. Here's my pizza pan. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to put a little olive oil on it and spread it around so it doesn't stick to that either. And of course, to make this perfect looking, I'm not trying to be perfect. I'm trying to nourish myself with something that's made really easily. You do this a few times and you're going to end up being perfect on everything you do, because you're going to know exactly what you want. Now we take that and just spread it out onto the pizza pan. You can doctor it a little bit. Once we have that done, you can use, the sauce will be next. You can use whatever sauce you want. I want wholesome ingredients on it, so you can make it yourself. I'll show you how to do that. And you can buy a sauce with wholesome ingredients in it. What are wholesome ingredients? Whole tomatoes, olive oil, cold pressed olive oil, no other kinds of oil in there. Let's peeking over the edges a little bit. That's pretty thin sourdough, fermented, gluten neutralized crust. That's going to be great. So you can see the process of that. Now I'm going to take my rolling pin, just roll the edge off like magic. You really don't need to even use that all the way. Hanging too much over the edge. The key in this and just getting this right is not using too much moisture yesterday when I made it. So you want to under moisturize it. Now it's time for sauce. And so what I can use for sauce is, you can buy one. This actually is one I like to use, Rao's homemade pizza sauce. And if you read the ingredients, you have Italian whole peeled tomatoes, Italian cherry tomatoes, olive oil, carrots, onions, salt, oregano, garlic, basil, no preservatives, no additives of any kind, and no oils that aren't good for you. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to make half this pizza with that sauce, and I'm going to do it old school on the rest of it. I'm going to take, now I could take tomatoes and boil them down, and I'll do that in a coming video, but these are Palmy organic chopped tomatoes, and you don't want a bunch of moisture in it. So what I'm going to do is set up a rig here, because you don't want it to get your crust too wet. So you can actually cut the spout off, and then don't make a big mess. Pour it in and let that initial moisture drain off right there. And as that's happening, we're just doing that, like I said, so we don't drench our crust, and we still have good crust. And this is if you want to make it yourself. Same way it would be if you had the tomatoes. You just peel the tomatoes, or you put them in hot water, and then the peel will come right off. Then you boil them down and strain out the liquid the same. And see, now I have that done. All you really need to do to make a decent tomato pizza sauce is add some garlic to it. Now you can add oregano and salt. Well, salt I'm going to add anyway, but you can add oregano and other things to it. And if there, hold on to your moisture in case you need it still. But I'm going to put one whole clove, big clove of garlic in. In that goes. And that should be enough, actually, because that clove was big. I'll usually put 1.5 to 2. Some of these have more moisture than others. And so now I'm just very carefully going to put some back in, because as it heats, we want to heat the garlic up. Just put a little back. We want to heat the garlic up so that it gets sweet and mild. So it just takes a little bit of heating to do that. And remember, this is just the one I decided to make myself. You don't have to do this. The main thing is, once you have that crust made, you're going to have healthy pizza. And that is the biggest part of a piece of pizza, and it's the worst part because of all the yeast and degraded white flour that they put in it. That really has no nutrients whatsoever. And so it's the part of pizza that's extremely unhealthy. This is going to be great, a staple of life for you. You could eat this every day. fresh whole tomatoes, fresh garlic, salt, pepper, and cheese. And ideally, if you could make cheese yourself, that would be really the deal, which you can. And I'm going to do that in upcoming videos, and it's fully probiotic. You have to ferment the milk yourself. So this is the rouse that I added. So what I'm going to do is put that on this half and just spread it out. Don't make a big deal about it. My spoon's a little small, but even with a small spoon, it worked just fine. Spread it around to the edge, just like you always see. And well, that's starting. Now I have a way of turning it up on high, because then I back it off and I keep a close eye on it, but you burn it. Cook on medium, or keep an eye on it. You can see once I get this sauce spread out, that's going to be good. That's half of it. Just a teeny bit more. Then I'm going to put cheese on top and a few slices of tomato. It's going to be a very simple piece. I'm not going to add meat to this one. Pizza. I'm not going to add meat to this one. And this sauce can actually, and that's the oven saying I am heated up. I'm putting just a little bit more moisture because I'll boil it right back off. It's just to cook that garlic. So all you have to do is just cook it a little bit. Just let it cook a little bit, keep the lid on it. Because then we're going to spread it out on here just the same after I put a little bit of salt in it, which now is a good time. So there you go, salt. Why not a little pepper? A little oregano if you want. Put this up. In the meantime now, I'm going to get my tomato ready. And I'm going to go back. Don't let your sauce burn. Depending on what setting you put it on. Keep an eye on it. The cooking of so many things is a little bit like a dance. Boy, you're going to have good food. And when you add up the time I put into making this right now, you'll see how short a time this is to have wholesome food. And again, I'm making my own sauce, so it takes a little longer. Really, I rolled that dough out and put it on there. You're pretty much done if you're going to use sauce that's already made. I'm going to cut these tomatoes pretty thin, because I found that you put tomato on pizza, it's really, really good. But you don't want them too thick, because the water of the tomato comes out. It takes a bit to evaporate off in the oven. So now I'm going to turn that off. I'll take this off. And it looks to be just right. And so I'm going to get another spoon here. Give it a little taste. That's just perfect. That's just perfect. So now I'm going to spread this one out. And this particular tomatoes are just a little bit more, just different tasting. Every sauce is going to taste a little bit different. It's not that sweet. You can try this with fresh tomatoes. Just use the sauce that you like the best. Try different ones. This is the closest you can get to obviously homemade before cutting and boiling down the tomatoes yourself. But that's the two sides. I mean, most of the time I will just make it, use what I can buy in the store, because there's some really great options. Okay, so your options with cheese are to use just a basic mozzarella that you sprinkle around, or you can get really high class, and it's not so much high class as it is fresh. It's the closest to the way cheese should really be done and made, except they pasteurize the milk first. And when you pasteurize it, they have to add back in cultures. But it's possible to actually make your cheese without ever doing that and not pasteurizing it. But I'm going to do a small section with this type of cheese. And you've all seen this. This is in the cooler section at the store. This is mozzarella. I'm going to put them out first. You don't want to add a bunch of the liquid. You're going to mess your dough up. But you can smash them or not smash them. I'm only going to do a small portion in this just to compare, because I'm fine with the kind of pizza that comes from regular mozzarella, because it seems to have a lot of taste, and they're both made very similar. The cheeses, they add the cultures afterwards. So, but you sprinkle this around. Just remember what we're making this on. The foundation of this pizza is fermented sourdough, and it's the amount of time to make this is so quick once you roll your dough out, especially if you don't make your own sauce. We're going to put a few pieces of tomato around. Nothing about this has to be perfect, but it will be perfect and nourishing, and that's really what you want. So I didn't cut up too much tomato, but that's the way I'm going to do it. And now we're good to go. So we're going to put it in the oven, which is preheated. I preheated to about 495, and we're going to put it in there 15-ish minutes, but we're just going to check it and make sure it's done right. Wish it luck. We'll be back. Okay, we're back, and it's right around 14 minutes, almost 15 minutes. And so what I'm going to do is take that beauty out. And there you have it. It looks beautiful. And without burning myself, I'm going to slide it right off onto the board. And you notice, remember to turn your oven off. And by the way, these gloves are great. I've never even come close to burning my hand using those. They're in the link in the descriptions down below, and you can use many different ones that'll work. Those are the ones I found, and I never have any problem. But this pizza is fantastic. Look at that. And of course, you can experiment around. Different ovens have different temperatures, and you know, none are going to be exactly the same. So what I do is I reach in the oven and just kind of lift the crust up and feel it. And you know, it can get even a little more crisp, but you have to remember the sauce adds a little bit to it also. And so it's great how it is, but you can cook it a little bit more, either one. Make it just, you can see if I take a piece here, and it's a little hot, but listen, it's crunchy on the edges and in the middle of the road. So you get it exactly how you want by how long you cook it. But what I'm going to do now is cut a piece. Now you can see where the one kind of cheese I used here, and then the other kind over on this side. And I mean, like, how many times have you ever had a pizza this size that you can just say, you know what, I'm going to take a piece out of this side, and then I'm going to take a piece out of this side, and that's just how I cut it. It's your pizza. You can do whatever you want. Now, what you want to always keep handy with this is the salt, and sometimes it takes a little extra salt. I'm going to give this a try. This is the cheese from the bag. And that is some good pizza. It's just about right. You know, a lot of people put Parmesan cheese on. And Parmesan cheese really, for me, what it mostly does is salt it, because it's a very salty cheese. And I've noticed that if you just salt your pizza a little bit, it totally takes the place of that, because it's already loaded with cheese. So really, just a little bit of salt on there, And that's the other side that used the sauce out of the jar. And that's mighty good sauce. The other is a little bit more, I don't know, I would say a flatter taste. It's just completely different, but both are extremely good. You can put basil on it also, but what you have here is you have good food for you, and food that many people considered all along, oh, you shouldn't eat that, that's junk food. Well, it is junk food because the way the companies make it is junk. But this is whole food, God-given food, food that's good for your body. It's going to nourish you, make you healthy, well, and also happy because it's the best tasting. So give this pizza a try. You saw how easy it is to make and how good it is. And that pizza right there, that probably cost the cost of a bag of cheese and a little bit of tomato and whatever that flour is. Surely not more than $5, $6. You know, you go to a pizza place and you're going to give you $25 at least for that. And the dough is not going to be good for you. So there you have it. Let me hear your comments down below. Let me know how it goes for you. This is like the best ever. I know you're going to love it, and I'll see you in the next video.